The Ottoman Empire attracts attention as one of the longest-lasting states in history. It existed for more than 6 centuries. Some historians even consider it the direct successor of the Great Rome. Today we'll go through the key moments of its journey, from its origins to the capture of Constantinople, its peak under Suleiman the Magnificent, and the reasons for its eventual decline. Get comfortable, we're about to answer most of the questions. However, the most important one, exactly how the Ottoman Empire came into being, has no precise answer. Anyone who claims to know for sure is most likely greatly exaggerating. The situation was best described by the well-known specialist on Turkey, Colin Imber. The early history of the Ottomans is a true black hole, where legends are mixed with facts, and every attempt to fill this hole creates yet another legend. Why did this happen? In short, the first more or less reliable, and not purely literary, records about the founding of the state appeared only in 1476, 23 years after the fall of Constantinople. The state itself emerged around 1299. In other words, there are almost no direct Ottoman sources from the very beginning. We only know that a predecessor of the future state already existed. Byzantine chronicles, for example, mention Osman I's battle against the Byzantines in 1301. But proper Ottoman chronicles appear only a century and a half later. Therefore, the origins can only be judged from fragmentary and mostly indirect evidence, largely from foreign sources. And the picture in Asia Minor at that time was extremely turbulent. From the 10th to 13th centuries, Turkic tribes actively migrated there from Central Asia. Various Islamic currents created states and constantly fought each other. Eventually, the Seljuk Empire came out on top. Its founder, Seljuk, according to tradition came from the steppes, roughly the territory of present-day Kazakhstan. The Seljuk steadily took pieces from the Byzantine Empire year after year until, in 1243, the Mongols arrived. The Sultan quickly became a vassal, and the empire broke apart into many small principalities, beyliks, which then fought among themselves for power. It was in one of these beyliks that Osman I appeared. According to legends, his ancestors were Turks from roughly the same regions, Kazakhstan or Iran. Osman expanded his lands, causing trouble for both Byzantium and his neighbors. 2 important points should be noted here. This was not yet the Ottoman Empire, in the usual sense. That name came much later. Osman's personal role is often overstated. Osman declared the independence of his beylik when Mongol influence weakened. Paradoxically, it was the Mongols who, to a large extent, enabled the future empire's birth. They destroyed the centralized Seljuk power and stopped raiding Anatolia, considering it Byzantine territory, and Byzantium was an ally of the Mongols. This gave the Ottomans breathing space and the chance to grow stronger. At first their beylik was only average in size and far from the most aggressive. Success came thanks to 2 main factors, the weakness of Byzantium and the flexible policy of the Ottomans. Already 2 centuries before the fall of Constantinople, the Byzantines barely controlled their border regions. Greeks often simply abandoned their cities. For example, the town that served as the capital of Osman's father was taken without any fighting, and many Greek peasants voluntarily went over to the Turks. Why? First, people feared raids and preferred to negotiate. The Ottomans were open to cooperation. Second, Byzantium crushed its population with heavy taxes, while the Ottomans initially had almost none. There were dozens, if not hundreds, of such cases where villages and entire districts switched sides without resistance. Later, as their territory grew, the Ottomans began adopting European practices. They introduced taxes and declared Christians second-class subjects. Those who accuse the Turks of cruelty and cunning should understand, they invented nothing new, they simply copied what was already being done in Europe. By the time the Greeks realized what was happening, it was too late. Some fled, some tried to revolt, but most either converted to Islam or resigned themselves. Many, by the way, accepted Islam even when the Ottomans were not yet actively forcing it. Interestingly, even today a considerable number of people of Greek origin live in Turkey. The Ottomans did not harbor blind hatred toward the Byzantines. They often acted as mediators in their internal disputes, concluded dynastic marriages, and used sophisticated diplomacy. Yet each time this was accompanied by the loss of Greek territories, often without major battles. The choice remained simple: convert to Islam and live in peace, or sooner or later see an Ottoman army at your gates, roughly the same way Christianity once arrived in Europe in place of the Roman Empire. Unlike Rome, the Ottomans long lacked a strict system of succession. Usually the new ruler was a son or close relative, but first he had to prove his competence to the military commanders and elders. Idiots like Commodus were almost never allowed to the throne. Later, however, the custom changed. Each new sultan frequently eliminated all his brothers to remove any rivals. It was precisely this system, combined with unified central authority, unlike fragmented Europe, that allowed the Ottomans to gradually grind down Byzantium. Osman's son Orhan conquered large parts of the western territories, including parts of Serbia and Bulgaria. He also laid the foundation for the famous Janissary Corps, recruited from Christian boys, and introduced the office of Grand Vizier, the Sultan's chief assistant, according to one version, to neutralize his brother Alaeddin, who was also a contender for power. By the 1460s the Ottomans controlled almost the entire Balkan Peninsula and Asia Minor, and soon dominated Mediterranean trade, weakening Venice. The first 150 years of the empire's history are often called its Golden Age. Then came Suleiman the Magnificent. Unlike Mehmed II, who captured Constantinople, and his father Selim, he was regarded more as an enlightened and diplomatic ruler. He freed many prisoners, established relations with Venice and, unexpectedly, with France. By the 16th century Ottoman borders had reached powerful Austria, while Europe remained a field of endless feudal wars. Francis I realized there were no real reasons to hate the Turks, and for the next 300 years France became a strategic ally of the Ottomans. Spain made a similar offer, but looked less promising. Thanks to this alliance, the Ottomans crushed half of Hungary, imposed tribute on the other half, and expanded their possessions in the east. Although Suleiman is often portrayed as a pacifist diplomat, during his reign he conducted at least 13 major campaigns: Egypt, Iraq, Kurdistan, most of North Africa, Rhodes, the last stronghold of the Knights of St. John, taken after a 6-month siege, and full control over the Mediterranean. His peaceful achievements were also enormous. The Turks call him the lawgiver. Under him appeared a code of laws that remained in force for 3 centuries. It clearly divided the population into groups, adapted Sharia to local realities, and placed ability above birth. Suleiman valued justice, and this earned him lasting love in Turkish society. Christians under him often held high positions. Only a narrow list of positions was reserved exclusively for Muslims, and Christian peasants and artisans frequently lived with greater freedom than in Christian Europe. Still, it would be wrong to idealize Suleiman completely. It was during his reign that the first signs of decline appeared. The empire had grown too large, its western and Balkan parts were more developed, while the eastern regions remained conservative. The Ottomans began falling behind in firearms, artillery, and military tactics. In his old age Suleiman withdrew from governing. Factional struggles began. Europe was discovering the New World and new trade routes. Ottoman money gradually lost value. Russia was rising. In 1683 the Ottomans suffered a heavy defeat near Vienna, after which major new conquests stopped. The country remained largely agrarian. Trade was mostly in the hands of non-Muslims. Corruption and the sale of offices, disguised as gifts to the vizier, flourished as early as the later years of Suleiman. The army demanded enormous funds, but progress stalled. While Europe underwent the Industrial Revolution, the Ottoman Empire continued living by the old ways. Even its large army and military talent could not compensate for technological backwardness. The alliance with France helped during the Crimean War, but the empire was already doomed. From the late 19th century onward, uprisings broke out one after another in the Balkans and Western territories, the very regions that controlled most of the empire's trade. The sultans could do little about it. By the time of World War I, the Ottoman Empire was effectively a corpse. The emergence of the Republic of Turkey was a completely logical outcome. At the same time, it is foolish to call the Ottomans a barbaric state that supposedly only exterminated Christians. They treated Christians rather tolerantly, often better than in many parts of medieval Europe. They paid serious attention to science and medicine. The Ottomans popularized scalpels, forceps, catheters, and other life-saving instruments. Suleiman patronized poetry and art. Istanbul's museums still hold masterpieces. For almost 6 centuries the empire successfully governed dozens of nationalities and religions. That alone is an outstanding achievement. Many historians of the Renaissance era considered Ottoman sultans the true heirs of the Roman emperors. Nowhere in Europe was power so concentrated in one pair of hands. That's all for now. See you next time.